Hi everybody, I hope you're all enjoying Freshers Week. My name is Eleanor and I'm the Speaker's Officer for this term. I'm sure you're as excited as I am to be sat down with the Vamps today. As you likely already know, the Vamps are a British pop rock band consisting of 4 members, Brad, James, Connor and Tristan. Ever since the release of their platinum-selling debut album, Meet the Vamps, the band have been incredibly active, releasing another 4 albums and being the first band to headline the London O2 Arena 5 years in a row. This year, they're celebrating their 10-year anniversary as a band with a Greatest Hits World Tour throughout the UK, which will begin this November. We're so lucky to be joined by Brad and James today, who are going to start by giving a short address whenever you guys are ready.
Hello, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. We hope you're all well. I'm Brad. It's nice to see you all.
And I've seen so many of these on YouTube, and to it's one of those weird moments where you're like, oh God, we're actually doing it.
That's why the chair threw me off. I didn't really know what to expect, but it's a very comfortable chair.
It's very good. Well, my name's James, sorry, and it's a privilege to be here in this room where so many other people have done brilliant interviews. And we're going to lower the bar, I think, slightly. But yeah, thanks for having us. And we know there's going to be some good questions, so without further ado, we'll jump into them instead of trying to talk some drivel that no one cares about.
I know that the audience will have a lot of burning questions for you guys. I'm going to go through a few questions before opening it up to the floor. So first of all, congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. Given that you're celebrating it this year, as you look back over your experiences, is there any piece of advice you would give yourselves just starting out?
Should we do an answer each, maybe, if you go first?
There is such a thing as jeans that are too skinny. Would be the first port of call. I think getting into music when I was I was learning guitar at 11. And then getting into music, I kind of really didn't know what to expect, when the band started to pick up. So I was gigging in bands and doing solo acoustic covers on YouTube from about 13 up until 16 when I met James. And I was I was a lover of music. I was a lover of bands and playing guitar and writing songs and singing. And I think I felt quite prepared for that going into it. But there was a whole other side to it that I hadn't necessarily prepared for or kind of realised that came as part of it, and that was the kind of the personal side of it, and the fact that people are interested in a part of your life that no one's necessarily been interested in before in school or whatever. So I think I would go back and I would maybe give myself a bit of preparation for that, because I think you take on quite a lot. You opened up to all of these voices and these opinions, especially as we were coming up through YouTube, and Twitter was a really, really big thing for us, kind of reaching a whole host of people. And you opened up to all these opinions that you never really used to hearing, so it was quite a jarring thing at first. But yeah, mainly the skinny jeans, though, I would say, just slightly baggier.
Skinny jeans. My hair was atrocious. But I think what I would say, which sounds a bit cheesy, but I think if I could see us when Brad had just turned 15, I was 18. When I first met Brad, and we met on YouTube. I saw a video of Brad doing an Ed Sheeran cover, and that's how we connected. So we didn't grow up together. And I would get the train. I grew up in Dorset, and I'd get the train after school on a Friday, go to Brad's house for the weekend, write songs, come back, go to school on Monday. And I think in that real magic, almost period of innocence, I think I'd say to us both back then, 10 years down the line, well done. You've kind of, you've done it. But also at the same time, you will, with everything in life, hurdles, challenges, you get through them. And whether that's something as simple as, I don't know, a key member of our record label leaving in a really important time, or a girlfriend breaking up with us, or losing someone really, really close to you, these sort of these are trials that we, as a 4, we got through together. And that's kind of why now I think with each of these challenges, you learn something, and that's how we evolve and grow, right? So I think I'd say to myself back then, there will be moments of despair where you don't want to do it anymore, where you question yourself, whether you feel like worthless. But then there's also going to be moments of like pure ecstasy, and you achieve things that you never expect to achieve growing up in, you know, Sutton Coldfield or Wimborne, where I grew up. You just don't expect to have those moments. And I would say when you are in those moments of crazy insanity of just being like, wow, look at me, like we're at this house party in LA with all these famous people, just like enjoy that moment, because enjoy those moments, because if you're not careful, it will just turn into a bit of a blur, and you won't remember those standout moments.
You off there, dude. Beautiful. Our manager, I remember this quite early on, the way that we kind of started writing songs. None of us lived in London, and a lot of the people that we were working with was in London. So our manager very kindly would put us in a hotel together, and it'd be 3 of us crammed into a hotel room at first, and then 4 of us when it was kind of not sure it was legal, but we got in there. And our manager, who had managed bands before us, so he'd managed McFly and Busted, he said to us, he was like, the moments in your hotel room where it's the 3 of you messing around, and this where it feels like we used to go into record labels and we'd have to play acoustic to like these 3 label bosses just like staring at us like this. And it was the most terrifying thing in the world. And he would say, this is going to be the best time of your life. Like, if it goes the way that we hope it does and you get to tour, and we've been very lucky with everything that we've done, you'll still remember this as being one of the best moments. And it has, to be fair. It's, I think that would be the thing that we go back and go, listen to your manager, enjoy every moment of it.
Having that continental breakfast every morning in that hotel, that was it, man. Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, that does sound good. I mean, in terms of the skinny jeans, though, that was like an everyone thing. So I feel like you guys shouldn't be so hard on yourselves about that.
Like, I was losing leg hair. It was crazy. It was so tough.
So it's a really impressive feat to be going strong so many years after your debut, but I'm sure it hasn't always been easy, as you've mentioned. Is there any point at all where you thought the band might actually break up?
I think there's been moments where I think breaking up, I wouldn't say so. I think kind of what I was saying before, there's been moments throughout the 10 years where we've been at a crossroad and we've had to make kind of like calculated leaps of faith. So whether that is, for example, our record label in America splitting 2 ways and us kind of being like effectively homeless at a label for a while, whether it's struggling to make an album whilst on a tour and sort of like getting to a bit of a brick wall, whether it's episodes of low mental health, like sustained periods, and then also just things that simple like fatigue. I think a lot of what people don't see in the music industry, there's many amazing elements of what we do, we love it, brilliant, but people only see what's on the internet or when you're on stage. People don't see the ins and outs. People don't see that, like, you know, 2 hours after coming off stage at like the O2 or anywhere, like I'll be sat on YouTube, like in a dark, quiet room, and I'll be like, this is a weird contrast. And if you're not careful dealing with that kind of roller coaster of weirdness, like energy changing, that's quite weird. And I think that takes a lot from you if you're not careful. I think there's one moment that I really remember thinking, God, this is like a dark place to be in. And we were in South America doing the Vamps tour, and there were a few factors that playing it. I really struggled with my relationship with food and exercise, and kind of centered around like needing to have a control on some part of my life, because what we do with the Vamps is a whirlwind, and I think some people love being constantly on the move and traveling. I really didn't, and I went into the Vamps with kind of personal issues with I guess like my body and stuff. So I remember being in South America thinking, like, you know what, like I was on stage just thinking, this isn't what I want to be doing, which sounds crazy now because I obviously I love playing live, but in that moment it just shows how your head can kind of make you have really interesting, bizarre thoughts. And I said to Brad, like, one morning just before going to do like a day of radio, like, dude, I don't know, like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I just feel low, like, and I don't know why. and having a conversation. That's sort of like the first time that I'd spoken to anyone in the band about that. And it's weird because to anyone looking in, you would say, like, you're being so ungrateful. Like, you know, the Vamps does what kind of 1% of, probably less than 1% of musicians get to achieve, and that's brilliant. And it wasn't that I wasn't grateful. I think I had so many internal kind of issues going on that meant that I needed to grasp at least a sense of feeling like I had an element of control in my life. And just what world touring kind of takes that away from you. So I didn't think that the band was falling apart. I think at the core of it, the relationship between the four of us is what holds us together, because what we have 10 years later, it's not like a manufactured, forced kind of thing where we feel like we have to do it to make money or to be famous. Or that's not why we do the Vamps. Like, we do it because we love each other as people. We love making music, and we're very lucky we have a strong fan base that have carried on supporting us. So I don't think we've come close to splitting, have we, really?
No, I don't think so. I hope not. I mean, saying that, Con and Tris aren't here, so
yeah.
maybe it's happened. Where are they? No, I don't think it is. I think for us, strangely, music is secondary in the Vamps, which sounds very odd for a band to say, but I would compare it to, like, you can't build a really nice house on bad foundations. So we've always kind of gone into the music creation of, like, if we're not set as a four, and if we're not in a really good place individually and as a group, the music's not going to come out the way that we want it to, and it's not going to resonate. So we've always been very conscious, like, especially that was just after the first album, or maybe just before the second album, that we had that conversation in South America. So it was right after the Whirlwind, and then ever since then we've been really open with each other as four lads and four friends, and I think that's been the basis of, like, we would never need to split up because we're friends primarily. And we'll make music when it feels right to make music. So no Vamps breakup on the cards.
Good, I think that's good news. So I was going to ask, what do you think the secret is to keeping it together for so long? But I think it's clear that it's your guys' friendship and that kind of solid foundation. So moving on from band dynamics to the music, obviously you're all very talented musicians and you've released a lot of music over the years. It's like 5 albums in 10 years is quite a lot. How do you ensure that you continue to innovate as artists so that you don't stagnate, so that everything you release is fresh and you feel like you're moving forward as a band?
I would say, I think innovate's like the perfect word. And I think it's either in you quite early on. Like, we've always been very driven as individuals as well, and then that kind of forms into a driven force as a band in a lot of different ways. So it's like, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near where I want to be as a singer or a guitarist or a producer. Or, like, this still now, 5 albums deep, I'm like, there's a hell of a long way to go. And I think that is the ethos that we all have. I know we all have, because we spur each other on with it. But if you don't continually set new goals for yourself, and you don't continually go, right, we did this and this on the last album, what didn't we do though? And then it's like, right, okay, that's where you don't stagnate, because you're trying to reach new goals. And then also, we're very conscious of, like, living life alongside the band. We enjoy the band, and the band has been going for 10 years because we have lives outside of it. Crazy, you know. But we go on holidays. James has been with his wife for
too long.
But, like, we try and make sure that we live life, so that then you just, every so often there might be something when you're away, or whether I'm with my mates, or whether Tris is watching a gig, or whether Connor's, like, he's working on other stuff. It all goes into a drawer, and then a year or 2 years later we'll come together and we'll be like, we've got all of this life experience and all of this inspiration that we now want to funnel into the next album. And I think it's drawing on your personal life, and it's trying to keep that drive going that makes you not get stagnated.
I think it's also very good answer. That did you prepare that before? That was very good. Very good. I think honesty, as musicians and songwriters for the Vamps, has been really important. And what I mean by that is every song, the themes are never things that we're like, let's come up with this scenario. Like, especially in the later albums, like Cherry Blossom, I think it's so important to be kind of speaking from the heart. And also, like, remembering at the core what the Vamps is for us. I think that if we were to change our sound every single album, if you were I'm a huge fan of Damien Rice, for example, and like there's always a reoccurring thread throughout. I wish he released more music, to be fair, but in the short volumes he has released, you know it's him all the time. And as a fan, that's what I want to see. And I appreciate, and like we do, you know, we've sort of like nudged into slightly different areas and genres, but at the core, it's still going to be four guys playing instruments and you know, singing and writing the music. And I think no matter what we do, I'd like to think that'll always be kind of the case. Yeah.
Yeah, you've made it really easy for me to actually ask my next question, which was, you know, you guys both on a kind of music level and then also like for public personas, obviously, was there any point at which, you know, obviously you want to keep that thread throughout your music, but was there a point at which you felt pressured to lean into a sound or a kind of boy band image that people associated with the Vamps?
I think it would be wrong to suggest that you're not influenced by other artists and just, you know, by the simple fact you listen to the radio or playlists and stuff, whether consciously or not, you're picking up ideas, themes and stuff. I think we've never actively come together in a room and said, we are going to make this album, as in like, you know, we're going to do a proper like rock album per se, or a full like EDM thing. I think we take elements of that and it's very natural, and I'm very lucky. I don't really produce with the Vamps at all, but the other three boys do, and they take a lot of time to like, you know, finesse their technique. So it will be something as simple as like, I don't know, Brad will say, oh, like, listen to this, and he's bought like a new bit of equipment and it's like a really sick, I don't know, like a Mellotron or something, and it's like a cool sound, and that will influence the rest. I don't think we actively go out and try and like conjure up this thing that's very different from what we do.
And I don't think we started out like that. Like, it was never like I feel for us a conscious like conforming into anything really. Like we had the first album, and when we play live, like we were very lucky that we did a theatre tour as our first ever tour, and then we jumped into an arena tour pretty quickly after that, which was just insane. But the songs that had been written and that was the first album, they felt big, ambitious, and like they belonged in arenas without sounding like. But like they felt like that, and I think we were lucky because we had a huge, and that's not us, we had a huge team of people helping us out with that, and collaborators and people writing those songs with us. But I think what we've continually tried to chase or conform back into is the feeling that we captured on the first album, which was these songs that started our career. So we were like, right, okay, let's try and bottle that, but at these different points in our lives, and still make it feel like when we're in the studio, we're always thinking, how's this going to translate to a live setting? How's this going to sound when we play it on tour in a year's time? And we want it to sound as good and as big as possible. And that is because of the first album and everything that was around it. So I think we've almost tried to conform into like the constraints that we built for ourselves around the first album. Outside of that, we're so insular as a four, like it's ridiculous. We're like our PR people.
Well, like the images, yeah.
They hate us. Like, because they'll be like, right, you're going to go to a really good networking event here. It's going to be there's some drinks, there's some really cool people here. You should go. It's a good opportunity. You'll come in like half an hour later and we'll be just stood in the corner of the room with just like
facing
some drinks, just chatting nonsense, just the four of us, and there's like. But we've just always done that. Like, we've been very self-contained and tried to not take influence too much from an outside thing and just do what we want to do, really.
So on that point, what are your guys like personally? What are your inspirations for you two just recently?
Ooh, that's interesting. I'm really liking Dermot Kennedy. I know he's only put out like half of his new album. Like gradually, we get a song every like couple months. But I love Dermot. I think he kind of has elements of like his lyricism is what interests me, because I guess there's only so many kind of chord progressions and whatever. And like obviously I love the music, but lyrics in my eyes, what he does takes me kind of back to, I mean, Damien Rice hasn't released music since like 2014. So for me, it's like, I'm kind of clinging on to that, but I need more stuff. I think Dermot is getting in that world for me lyrically. And it's encouraging me now to, you know, like there's a million, probably a billion songs about a breakup. But when you can find an artist that can present that theme to you in a way that you've not heard it before, that makes you feel an emotion, that's the thing. It's like, if you feel something from those songs, you feel like you've had that heart. I've been married for a year and I feel gutted hearing some of Dermot's songs. Like, I think that's the magic that you try and capture as a musician. So yeah, singer-songwriters, very sad singer-songwriters is my kind of, I love that. So that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
No, that's fine. I think Fred again's amazing at the moment. I think he just back-to-back bangers. He's amazing. Stranger Things fans are going to kill me because I can't remember his name. And whilst he was saying, I was like, what's his name? But he's got a project called Joe, DJO, and it's the lad from Stranger Things with the great hair. Who knows? Steve? Joe Keery. He's got a music project.
Your band has lived through an incredible change in the music industry, from a largely radio-based platform to the rise of music streaming and social media. How do you think that this has impacted the way music generally is released and received?
I think, yeah, it's been a big change. We were speaking about this earlier because for us it felt like we were at the cusp of a change coming from YouTube. So there wasn't many artists. YouTube was pretty new when we were coming through. There wasn't many bands or artists getting signed off it and then going on to make a career and make an album out of it. And we managed to do that and make that transition. And then I feel like TikTok is kind of doing a similar thing. It's a platform where artists can present themselves, and I think there's been some incredible artists coming through off it. I think the way that it's presented, I'm terrible at TikTok. Like, I'm just so, put it out there.
Brad's got TikTok, and I think your bio is something like, can't wait for this to be the only TikTok I post for like 3 months, and it's been like a year.
Yeah, it's been a year and 3 months, yeah. Yeah, it stresses me out, but I really enjoy it for from a consumer, like just watching it. It's really fun. There's some really fun videos on there, but I think it puts a lot of pressure on artists, and I don't want that to be like a woe is me thing, because it's not. But I just feel for a lot of people like breaking through, because you've obviously got to have focus on creating the music. Then performing live is a really big thing for a lot of artists. Like, it might give them stage fright or whatever. So that's a huge part of your career to kind of worry about. And then now you've got this. You've also got to be a pretty sick TikToker and be able to create really good TikTok content as well. So I think it's like, from a releasing side of things, it's interesting because it adds a whole nother side to your artist sphere and what you have to do. But artists are becoming really creative with it, and you're just seeing people push the boundaries. So it's really interesting, exciting. From a receiving side of things and a consuming side of things, I think it's really interesting. I hope that it doesn't affect the creation of the music, because I think what you're seeing happen is people lock into a small amount of a song, obviously, and you're starting to see powers that be obviously look for, whether it's a label or a publishing company or whatever, we need a 7-second TikTok part of the song, and that's just not the way that music's written. Like, you can't go in with that preface of like, right, today we need to write a song, but within it needs to have a TikTokable moment. That shouldn't be how it works in my life. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that back and forth develops of like the consuming of it influences the creation of it. James? Yeah.
I just echo that. I think I get worried slightly. I mean, this isn't just TikTok, this is social media in general. In society, we're all encouraged to have an opinion on everything instantly without giving yourself time to process. So like a headline breaks, whatever it is, and I feel like definitely, from my experience as a user, people have to post about something as soon as it happens. And then, you have to declare whether you're for something or against it. Like politics is the obvious example. But I don't think music should ever be forced into that kind of almost like clinical thing, this decision-making. You hear a 7-second clip of a new Vamp song on TikTok, and you immediately have to say, do I like that, do I not like that? Like the whole thumbs up, thumbs down thing on YouTube, I think, is like tragedy. Why do we need to be showing how we rate a song on a social media platform? Music shouldn't be something that is just so seen in a clinical way. And I worry that when the statistics and the algorithm takes over, this sounds like a bit of a snobby thing, but like the artistry of music, music for us is an emotion and a language. It's not like a mathematical equation. And I can see the industry with Spotify, but with TikTok in particular, curating the sort of songs that we should be writing as artists, to the point where I was listening to the biggest UK Spotify playlist the other day, and one of the songs was like 90 seconds long. And it was what Brad said, it was the TikTok moment, and everything else was sort of like building up to that. And it's like, that's not how we write songs. We're not, when you sit down to write a song, you should be thinking, we do it because it's cathartic. I want to address certain emotions that I've not been able to explore before. We don't think, how do we get a song viral on TikTok? So I'm kind of worried where that's going. But I'm also equally worried with kind of like toxicity on Twitter. So it's like, it's a bit of it. And I wonder whether maybe I'm just a dinosaur that doesn't want to evolve with the times.
It's a double-edged sword, because I've spoke to a lot of like younger artists who are starting to work on their own projects, and they're coming through on TikTok. And it's been a really positive thing. And it's been like they genuinely have sat in their bedroom and wrote a song on an acoustic guitar and put it up. No, I'm just like, no, I'm just that. And it's just got hundreds of millions of views and sparked everything. So it's interesting, but the fact that there's opportunity and there is new music coming through is only a good thing. We'll just have to wait and see like where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely going to ask about kind of the structural limitations of the apps that, are kind of like changing the music industry, the short clips and the rapid consumption and everything like that. I feel like you guys have kind of talked about the good and the bad with that. So moving on to a more personal question, rising to stardom as you did through YouTube, I'm sure it posed its challenges over the years. So how do you feel like this 10 years has impacted your experience, going from, just being in middle school to suddenly being famous? How's that changed your development as individuals?
I think it's probably very different for all four of us. It completely changed our lives, completely. All four of us were from like backgrounds of just kind of going to school and doing music as a hobby. I don't think any of us we were ambitious, but we were ambitious because we loved music. There wasn't necessarily like, I wasn't 15 going, I want to be touring in like 20 years. I was just like, this makes me really happy and it's a big source of joy in my life. I think how it's affected me as I've gone through my life is probably like, I'd almost say it's become a full circle thing. Like there's been a lot of trials and tribulations for us all, and like coming to terms with stuff 16 to 26, 27 is a big part in anyone's life. You go through a hell of a lot anyway, do you know what I mean? But having to do it in quite a public way maybe grows you up quite fast in certain areas. So for a long time, like I struggled, like trust was a really big thing for me. And it was like the ability to figure out people's motives became a really big thing for a while. And then in the past few years, it just hasn't. And I've kind of come back to myself a bit more, and it feels like I've come back to just like enjoying music and loving music. And I think that's partially because we were signed as a band for 5 albums, and we finished those 5 albums, and we came out of the record deal, and we were conscious. We were like, do we go straight back in and do we write another album, and do we go and pitch to record labels and try and like jump back in where we left off? And then there was a conscious like, actually no, let's take a pause, because we've been in it for so long. And we did, and I think it's done all of us on like a human level the world of good, because you get to just reset. Like, you go back to not having people kind of maybe put in a slight pressure on you to release stuff or be writing stuff. And I think that's been really good for all of us. We've all recentered. So it's been a bit of a journey, but where we are in our lives now is a beautiful place to be, I think. And like, that's like the tour that we're about to go on is going to feel like a real celebration of all of those moments. Do you know what I mean? Like the growing up and the having a chat in South America, and then the ups and the downs. So it's been good overall. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was quite an underconfident. I'm still quite underconfident, but I had really bad acne at school. Really struggled to find a group that I gelled with. So I went from that to then all of a sudden having 3 like-minded individuals that wanted to do music. And I think, when we were playing, I can't speak on behalf of Brad and the boys, but when I was playing pubs in Dorset when I was 16, like, I dreamt of like the Vamps happening, but you never think it's actually going to happen. And I think for me, there's been moments where achieving dreams, the reaction I had was not what I thought it would be or hoped for. And that's just because the nature of how fast things move and you're always on to the next thing. But I think it was quite sobering. And like, it's not to knock what we've done, because now I see and I appreciate it. But in the moment, hitting those goals that you've wanted forever, it's like I used to be a big collector of Warhammer when I was like 12. Loved that shit. And it's like you'd wait for the tank at Christmas. Oh, it was an amazing tank. Like, I loved it. And then it came and I made it. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? Like, you sort of like, when you feel that, I found me growing up, and this is probably just me with sort of various things I've sort of, mental things. But like, when I feel a sort of hole, it almost feels like it pushes it to another thing. So it felt for a while like I was just like whack-a-moling like things. And I think I realized that the crux, it was just no matter how many Vamp shows we did or songs we sold or whatever, if you go into that situation with sort of underlying issues, you can't solve that by like making money or like, touring and stuff. So I think for me, I realized very early on, I really struggle with dealing with change. And ironically, I would say the key to longevity in the music industry is being willing to change. So it's been a lengthy process for me that still affects me a lot. And some days, like I can be miserable to be around, and other days I can be hopefully good to be around. And I think now it's about realizing I've learned so much about myself, how I tick, and it's about realizing that if I'm having a bit of a weird day, trying to view that from a third-person perspective, trying to recognize that I'm in a really safe space with these boys, and being excited for the next thing. But I think, I do struggle with the uncertainty of not knowing. Like when the pandemic happened, we had no idea. We had 2-3 years planned, and it all just got cancelled. And that terrifies me. And I don't mean from a financial perspective. I mean mentally, I like to be busy. I like to work for things, I like to plan my calendar for as long as I can. And all of a sudden, it was like a clean slate. And I think learning to battle with those really horrible, intrusive, morbid thoughts in my head throughout that period, and still now, that's really difficult. And it's taken me 10 years of the Vamps to get to a point where I'm like, I feel a bit better. It's like I've got a new sword and shield. I'm like, okay, let's go. We're doing this today. Let's do it. Which I didn't have at the start. So I think I owe that to the Vamps and the opportunities and experiences we had. Like Brad touched on it. We were sort of forced to grow up quite fast. Like when we started the Vamps, all of my mates were going off to uni. And as you know, I think for a lot of people, they're forced to grow up very fast, and you're living away from home for the first time. We had that, but like we didn't go home for like years really. And I think dealing with all of these things very, very prematurely, like our bass player was 15 at the start of the Vamps, and then all of a sudden he's like, okay, we're going on tour, mate, for the whole year, kind of thing. We learn so many things, but at the same time, I think there were brilliant moments. We learn kind of, like the bond that we have, it's almost like, the closest I have is like with my wife now, and I met when I was like mid-20s, it's like, yeah. But like, that, so I think there was a lot of, there are a lot of emotions going around at that age, which as Brad said, difficult time, but I think, yeah, in hindsight, the Vamps has forced me to try and better myself and grow as a person. And I'm really grateful for that, because I don't really know where we probably all would have ended up without the Vamps.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Cambridge people can like relate to that, always trying to reach the next thing, always wanting to be busy. I want to bring it to the audience if they have any questions. I'm sure we've got, people wanting to know things, so
no, it's a couple.
Go right over here.
Yeah, let's go.
For relationships?
Relationships.
Easy man to ask.
Ask the married man.
God, that's really difficult. I think, for me, I'm very stubborn, like to the point where I think for me a big thing that I learned weirdly quite recently is instead I love like my favourite thing is listening to like political debate. I love that kind of thing. You don't want to be having a political debate like with your wife every night. You need to realise that there's a moment in your life for discussion and debate. But like, you need to, I've only just recently got to a point where I'm like, if we're having a conversation, verging on an argument, I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to diffuse this now. Because there's always a moment, I always think, I don't know about you guys, but like, there's a tipping point in an argument where if you say that one thing and you're going to say it and you're like, oh no. And then it's like, that's a problem. So for me, it's learning that point and then stepping back from it. Yeah.
I think it's applicable to like every relationship in your life, whether it's like a friendship or your wife or your husband. I think it requires hard work. Like a lot of people think it's like we're tricked into this belief that when you find the one, it should just be effortless and easy, and it should be fun. But there's an element of like everything requires a bit of work, and it requires, like James is saying, like a bit of push and pull, a bit of like admitting when you're wrong, or even when you think you're not wrong, saying that you're wrong. Like, and we've learned that massively in the band. It's like compromise. Everything is compromise. And it's the better way to push forward, you know what I mean? Reach a middle ground with things.
It's good. Right.
We go right there.
Have you guys got like a favourite song in Britain, like basically the South? Have you got a favourite one you've done?
There's a song on our first album called Shout About It, which I really like. And then, what else? There's a couple that are like favourites, partially because of the song, and then partially because of like what they meant and what they did. And like Married in Vegas, the first song off the last album, came right, like we thought we'd written the album, we'd handed the album in. We literally, like, the album was to be handed in the next day. And then that night, Married in Vegas was written. And I think it was just a really nice metaphor for just like a lot of things, of just like once you take the pressure off yourself, it's usually when the best things happen. And that was like, that whole album was about that, really. It was about just alleviating yourself of any stress, to allow yourself to actually blossom and do the things that you're meant to do. So Married in Vegas was a really special one for me.
I think it's like, it's easy to say that the most successful ones, or I presume it's maybe the presumption of like the public that like songs that have, the most famous ones are the ones, but actually I find it's the more obscure ones. So, the first album we had a song called She Was the One, which we started writing the verse of in, like, I think Brad's parents' house. And I think for me, some of those early songs, the memories are so, like, vivid of, like, how those things happened in a way that perhaps some of the bigger songs further down the line weren't, because when we were already riding the Vamps wave, like, writing an album on the road, it's not quite as... I don't see them in the same way, but those sort of, like, really exciting early day moments where, like, we were thinking, oh, is this, like, I think we've got, like, a good song here, and it was just the two of us and then the other boys. And then we recorded, like, that song, for example, in America, like, from nothing all the way to the end kind of thing, which, you know, that was, like, magic for us, because getting to go to a studio in America and, like, working with all these amazing instruments and stuff. So for me, yeah, it's definitely the ones that most people probably don't know.
And that was the one that, like, when I said we were going round to labels just playing acoustic, she was one of those songs.
Yeah.
Like, the other two, thank God, never made it out, because they were terrible. But she was the one ended up on the first album. So it was like, it's been there with us throughout the whole journey, so it's a really special song.
Yeah. Okay.
So how do you go about writing songs? Do you generally write to music or like based on experience, or how does that work?
It depends every time, really. It's like, it's completely different. That's such a boring answer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, we sit down, we get a big spreadsheet, and we go, no, it's...
One of my favorite songs of yours is Can We Dance, from one of your first albums, so that's why I asked that.
Oh, cool.
It's one of my favourites too.
Oh, thank you.
I really like that song. It's in my party playlist.
Is it? Very good. I was just going to say that Brad's right, it is different every time, but I think that maybe it's more nowadays, it might start with, like, a saying or, like, a word or a feeling. I think it tends to start kind of on a piano or guitar, but I think the beauty about being in that moment is when you sit down and you feel like something to write a song, you don't really know where it's going to end up. Like, 9 times out of 10, the song will be rubbish. Like, well, obviously not, but for me, when I'm sat there and, like, so you should hear some of the stuff I've done, bloody hell. But, like, it's just, you're, like, rolling the dice, and you're like, you never know, and that's the beauty of song, right? It's the amazing thing about music. You don't know what's good until someone else hears it. Well, I don't. I might think something's good, and then my wife will say, no, that's really not good. Or, you know, you say songs like Can We Dance? So that song, the chorus was written by Bruno Mars, and we heard just Bruno Mars singing the chorus in the first trip we did when we were very young to America. And
Horrible, by the way, as being a 17-year-old lad. And can you just sing this Bruno Mars chorus, please?
But we finished that song and we thought it was, like, good, but I remember we had, on that same trip, we did a couple of other songs. We did a song called Wild Heart and a song called Cecilia and a song called On the Floor as well, and I think I definitely preferred the other ones. I liked Can We Dance, but for me, I didn't know it was going to be a big song for us. And that is, I love that, the uncertainty. I mean, it's terrifying, but, like, that's the brilliance of song, isn't it? You don't know which are going to be the ones. And, you know, 10 years later, that you guys still like that song, that's just, like, kind of blows my mind. Yeah.
I can't imagine Bruno Mars singing that chorus.
Oh.
Like, that's crazy. Like, that's just always going to be etched in my mind that you sang that. Like, I can't imagine that. Okay, let's see.
The power.
I know. I have so much power right now. Can we go right at the back?
On Monday, I'm just curious, like, what a regular day of a musician looks
What do we do on Monday?
Monday
Best
particularly.
question we've ever had. 100%.
I am, as any Monday or recent Mondays, so the more recent Mondays, I catch up with Game of Thrones the next day, just to make sure that I've done that. I think it's actually a really interesting question, which is probably going to prompt an answer that no one wants, but one of the amazing things and also horrible things about the music industry is every day is a Monday and a Saturday. So you can have a really busy day, like all Sunday, and it can be the most tired you've ever been. But then on Monday, you can do absolutely nothing. So for us, we don't really have a scale of, like, it's Monday. We don't get a Monday morning feeling. but then we also don't get a Saturday morning feeling or a Friday night feeling. It's all kind of one. I don't know what did you do on Monday? Like, I don't even know what day it is. It's Friday today. Okay, I don't know.
It's interesting because like it's probably the same for all of you guys, but like a Monday, I feel like you know how your week's gonna go depending on how your Monday's gonna go. So that kind of makes sense. So if you have a good Monday, if you wake up good Monday, it usually sets the precedent for the rest of the week for me, in a way, maybe, or at least the day. But I've been finding recently where it's like, if you approach every day as like, okay, this is the Monday, this is the beginning to like maybe the next 7 days or blah, blah, blah. And you go, right, I want to start off on a really good foot. I will actively try and push myself into being like going to the gym first thing or going for a run first thing. And then I'll try and eat semi-healthy. And then we're going on tour in like a month, so at the moment I'm in like quite a good routine because I know I've got to be. But if we didn't have a tour, it would be like sleep until about 4 o'clock and then probably not do anything with the rest of my day, basically. But at the moment, it's like gym and try and get into a healthy cycle.
It's all from this side. I have to like, move my head. Let's see. I'm going to take the one that's on this side.
Oh, you gotta.
You just made me run.
I'm sorry.
Hi. Do you have any routines individually and as a band you do before going on stage?
Well, there's often a shot of Jaeger each. That's like, genuinely though. I think we don't have any like crazy things, like we don't have to do like a certain dance or anything, but we do rub our chins together, which through the pandemic we couldn't do, and it was actually quite traumatic, not being able to feel that stubble.
Wow.
Brad has like an array of noises he makes. It's like he obviously has a warm-up thing, but like there was a period of time that it was very aggressive. Could hear it from the toilet.
Yeah, voice was wavering a bit. A lot of screaming. We also didn't realise, like, Connor, our bass player, has got a nut allergy.
Oh my God, I've got an allergy.
And I like curry. So that chin.
He's the loveliest dude, and like he didn't say for years. Like we obviously knew he had a nut allergy, but
So
like
bad.
people would we'd be eating whatever in catering or throughout the day, and then not really realising we'd be coming into chin. And like, it's, the pre-show ritual is so weird. So like, we'll chin for the length of time that we chin is determined by what day of the month it is.
So it'd be like 7 seconds
We
today.
chin for 7 seconds today. So it'd be like end of the month, and you could see Con's like kind of dreading it a bit.
Yeah, turning blue, isn't he?
We're about to go on stage. And then we'd chin and we'd realise that he's like holding his breath the whole time. And he never told us that it's because it's like, well, if you guys have been eating nuts, we were like, dude, we're so sorry. Like on the 31st, he just blacks out.
Yeah.
That's actually what you guys do. Like, that's not trying to play a trick on us.
We've had some funny looks, like if you do stuff like we did, we performed at St James's Palace for now King Charles and a few other like really famous people, and we were like backstage in this like a lovely room with loads of nice ornaments and stuff, and we're just there with our chins like silent, looking at each other. It's like, what are they doing, man? But it's it's very powerful, and it's now one of those things that we like can't go without doing. Like no matter where we are, we have to do it. We won't tell you what we do for TVs. That's different. But when it's a live performance, we have to do the chin. Yeah.
Just imagining if before this you guys just started like, and I'd be like,
there's only two of us here, though.
Now?
It has to be all four.
There was one
I see.
There was a gig that I'd missed because I had to fly back I had tonsillitis, so I had to fly back. And there was one gig where Con had broken his knee, so he couldn't play. And both gigs, we FaceTimed in. And someone just held the phone up. So that's what we would do.
I'll take one from this side. Let's see. Right there.
Favourite collab? Good question. The Matoma one was really interesting. So we had a song a few years ago called All Night. And it was the first, like, electronic dance music collaboration that we'd ever done. Like, we'd had songs remixed and stuff, but we'd never led with a song that was primarily a dance song. And it was another one of, like James was talking about earlier, about we still don't know which is going to be the song that goes and connects in the biggest way. And a lot of us were very nervous about that beforehand, because we'd come from like the first and second album sounding very organic and playing live as a band, to then releasing a song that was a dance song. We loved it, and Tom Matoma is like the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. But we didn't know how it was going to react, and then it went out and kind of did what it did, and it really helped transition us. It felt like the beginning of the next stage of our career, and I think for that reason, and the fact that it's like you can try new stuff and it can breathe a whole host of like new energy into what you thought was going to be your career, that meant a lot. It was really cool. It kind of meant that, they're kind of like, we can do anything now, like the rules just don't exist, so it's good.
I really like that song, and I feel like it's also a very like recognizable like Vamp song as well. So it's a good song. Okay, right here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I was just wondering what you would be doing if you hadn't kind of blown up in the music industry. So do you have any other hidden talents or hobbies?
It's a tough one, man. Like, I absolutely loved history and English literature at school, and that's what I did for my A-levels. And I think I have like a weird obsession with history, like, trust me, odd. You should see some of the things I've collected in my front room, weird things. So maybe something like that, but I don't know. Like, I'm very lucky, actually, being honest, because I started the Vamps process in my first year of A-levels, and I met Brad in the second year. So by the time A-levels had finished, we were kind of going like it was happening. So I never had to think, what am I going to do without the band? But I'd guess, yeah, history maybe, something like that.
The only other thing that I remember wanting to do was be an architect. I can't draw, so I don't know where like this confidence in like, yeah, I'm going to be an architect. I'm such a bad artist, it's insane. So the only thing I can do is like that S with the 3 lines, which could be a good house, do you know what I mean? Not seen it yet. But yeah, I wanted to be an architect, but I don't know what I would have done. I think I would have liked to do, what that says to me is that I like doing something that's like, it's a beautiful craft, that like creating something out of nothing and creating something where nothing was. So the idea of doing something like that would have been nice, but realistically I probably would have just, my dad's a golf coach, and I used to collect golf balls from the range on the golf buggy, and I really loved it. Like the golf buggy was wicked, so I probably would have just driven the golf buggy around.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
There we go.
Favourite Taylor Swift? That's a very tough question, mate. Very tough. I love Red. Like, oh my God, I almost do. Man, that song. I don't know, man. I think 1989 was a really important Taylor album for her, obviously, but then de facto for the Swifties, right? And I think it kind of opened that door to a genre that I hadn't really, like Blank Space, man, come on, give us a chance. Just brilliant songs. And as a musician, I think all of us, whether we were huge fans of Taylor before or not, I think we recognised that she kind of like stuck a flag in the sand there and being like, this is what I'm doing. And I think the whole industry was like, wow, okay. So I'd say Red, but yeah, I genuinely love them all, especially the early stuff, yeah.
I love Red.
Okay, so I'm wary that we've gone over, but we also started a bit late, so I'm happy to take a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Do you guys want to choose? I feel like I've been really greedy.
Oh, don't do that. That's like the worst thing.
It's like too much pressure on me. I want to share the burden.
No, you look as well.
I was wondering if you remember what it was like to go home for the first time after, you've been on tour and now you're the Vamps, and obviously before you were just another boy in town.
Like after the first big stint away? That's a really good question. I think I remember going back to the pub in my local town and it being like, you were never this nice to me before.
Yeah.
But
Oh, it's 3 pints.
yeah, I was like, I'll take this. This is great. I'm really lucky. Like, we've got an amazing support network within the band. And then I've got a group of friends that I grew up with from being about 11, 12, who still live within like 5 minutes. So I've been very lucky that I get to go home and see them every time. So they've kind of created a real like solidity. And it's like, I'm not Brad from Vamps when I go home. I'm just Brad. And it's like, it's been really, really nice. And I think that's helped the whole process for me personally. And I know it's the same for you. You've developed all the boys have got amazing families and really lucky with that. But it's meant that when we go home, I can imagine for some people it can be quite a jarring thing, being a certain person in a town to then going away and coming back and being treated in an entirely different way. It must be a real, like a trip, do you know what I mean? It must be a really weird thing, but the boys from home were just like, you're right. That's it, so it was quite nice.
I don't really remember. I think my schoolmates, they've had a few more girlfriends though. I think they've been following some of our followers. A bit naughty, very naughty. No, but it's similar to what Brad said. Like, very lucky that we have like really nice groups, school friends and stuff. And we both kind of live in a similar kind of setup where it's like a small town kind of thing where nothing changes that often, and it just feels like you go back and it's all the same, which I think is really nice. I did go back to my school for the first time 2 days ago, like since leaving, and that was like terrifying. In fact, that was probably the most nervous I've been in my life, because I had to do I did 4 assemblies with each year group, and it was terrifying. But no, I can't really remember that first time, to be honest.
Hey, I'm going to sneak in a little question before we go to the final one. I've always wondered, you get all this fame and it's like the boy band thing, and then you've got all these girls like obsessed with you. Does that kind of impact your confidence? You don't let that get to your head at all, because you think it's like, the whole trust thing.
I actually,
what do you guys think of that?
I actually think, weirdly, for me, as I said before, I was quite shy before. It actually made me worse.
Really?
Because there was, I don't want to take it down like a dark, weird way, but I'm going to do it. I was 18 at the start of the Vamps. So, quickly 19, you know how it works. Every year you get older, right? So I was like 19, 20 when it was like really starting to happen. And a lot of our fans of that time were kind of like 14, 15-year-old girls. And there was a moment of real kind of like sexuality associated, as in, we would be sent a lot of sexually explicit pictures, for example, and this is very serious, but underage women, and I hated that pressure of constantly feeling. I felt it was illegal, very inappropriate, and I hated it. I was quite. It's one of those things where, like, you say to your friends at home, that all these girls are saying this, or like following us around, or like trying to get in our hotel rooms, and they're like, yeah, but that's great. But actually, it's like, it's weird. It's a horrible pressure, which I don't really think many musicians speak about. Like, I hated that. I really hated it. And I met my wife Kirsty 7 years ago, but you'd still have girls that were trying to, I guess, like invade, like literally come into your bedroom, which I personally hated. And I think that kind of, that sexual pressure was not something that so actually my confidence was worse. And it got to a point where, like, you're like wandering around your hometown thinking like, oh, are they like gonna run over at me, or like try and like kiss you and stuff. And that, I appreciate, to people listening, they'll be like, shut up, mate. Like,
no, it sounds horrible.
It's actually
really horrible.
It wasn't something I enjoyed, to be honest with you.
It sounds really bad, actually. I don't think that would be enjoyable to anyone.
Yeah, it was intense. I think, like, we all actually had, like, at the beginning of the band, we had girlfriends that we'd kind of grown up with. And I think in the beginning we were all in relationships for the first like year. And that stood us in a good stead. And then me personally, I've never hugely, again, it's the trust thing. It was always the trust thing of just being like, the worst thing in the world for me would be like getting into a position where you're doubting why the person that you're with, like again, it's their motives thing. So I don't think it ever inflated anyone's ego within the band. If anything, like you're saying, it goes the other way.
I'm terrified of everyone now.
And you go, oh my God, like you start pushing people away, which is, yeah, very contradictory to what everyone thinks it would be. Especially as a band, because then you just go insular and you just end up like, we'll just chill. Do you know what I mean? The four of us will just do whatever we want to do. So no, it didn't luckily, but you obviously, it affects everyone in a different way, but that was just our experience.
Yeah.
That's really insightful. It's really interesting to hear that. Okay, final question. Which one of you chose the other one?
James has got the last question.
Oh, for God's sake, man. Okay, where are we going? Anyway, I hate this job. This is like so bad. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Hello.
It's not a very interesting question, but if you're somebody who really likes being on stage and things like that, like what advice would you give about performing?
Ooh. Is this for yourself? Do you like performing?
Yeah.
How do you like to perform? What is it that you do?
Oh, it's not, well, you know, I like it. Oh, God.
No? Actress. Amazing.
Oh, brilliant.
That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. That's it. Well, like you say, advice for anyone in that position, but I love performing. Like, I absolutely, it's my favourite thing to do. I've grown up. The reason that I got into music partially was because my mum got me an AC/DC live DVD, and it was like and it was in front of like 150. It was huge. It was just a sea of people, and I was like, that looks awesome. And it was Angus Young, the lead guitarist, used to dress up in a schoolboy outfit and run around, and he's one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And I was like, I just love the thought of like, these guys on stage are creating a moment, and they're creating something that, for however long it is, everyone in that audience has forgotten about whatever is going on. And I think for me personally, what some performers can fall into is maybe thinking that it's about you, which it is, but you have a responsibility to those people out there to make sure that they enjoy it, and that you take that very seriously, and that you go, I'm going to make sure that whoever it is in this audience tonight stops thinking for 2 hours. It's taken away from any dread or anything that's going on in their life. And that's what it is. That's what our job is as a performer, is to create a place of escapism for people. And I think as soon as you do that, it lifts all of that like insecurity or those like worries when you step out on stage. You are a creator of a moment for other people. It's bigger than you. And that would be my advice.
A good advice, man. I'd echo that. I think that point that Brad said about recognizing that everyone in the crowd, it's for them. That was a big thing for me to realize. A long time, actually, I didn't, you know, if you're having like a slightly bad day, I would take that then on stage, and I'd come off feeling like gutted, because I'd be like, well, I've not really given it what I could. And I think I genuinely, while I'm on stage now, like I could cry, like looking at for me, like seeing like parents bring their kid to a show, I'm like, that gets me, man. Maybe I'm getting old, but like, I think when you're on stage, I try now to look at the people and think like, it's not just like a sea of faces. That was like me 10 years ago watching like my favorite bands or whatever, or, you know, like, or if you're in a town like where I grew up in Bournemouth, you'd have a show maybe once a month. So like for those people, they don't have, it's not like London where I live now, where you could go out three times a week and see a band. It's like, these people might have waited for like 6 months to see you perform. And that's really special. That's important. You know, that, like, what a gift you have for people to come watch you perform. So I think I just try your absolute best to like recognize the significance of that and like the beauty behind that connection with you and the audience.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
This was
Thank you, everyone.
incredibly insightful. It was really interesting to hear. Can we get one more round of applause?
Thank
for
you.
the band?
Thank you.